My dad and I went to the mall on Christmas Day 1993 to look for Christmas ornaments. When I was 10, Christmas was an exciting time of year, full of joy and excitement. Following our shopping trip, my dad drove carefully through the busy streets while my mom talked next to him. I liked sitting in the back seat and watching the world go by. The joyful mood was broken in an instant. There was a loud explosion, and the car shook strongly. We were thrown into chaos by the strong jolt. I looked out the window just in time to see an ambulance crash into us. The force of the hit was very strong. Once stable, the car flipped over with a carefree spin, like a child throwing a toy. I was thrown into the air and didn't feel any weight until I hit something hard with a dull, disturbing thud. As my senses started to fade, I felt a strange lack of connection to everything. I was no longer attached to my body. Instead, I floated like a watcher who couldn't be seen. From this objective point of view, I saw the destruction. The car was a total mess. Every window was broken, and there was an ambulance next to us with its front end badly damaged. My heart was filled with worry and confusion. My dad was slumped over and pale in the car and wasn't moving. As she yelled our names, my mom's panicked and desperate cries cut through the air. Even though my heart stopped, the doctors worked very hard. I saw the doctor keep trying to do CPR, and I could hear a desperate rhythm against the quiet. Little by little, a faint heartbeat started to beat again, a thin line linking me to my hurt body. I was rushed to the hospital in a blur of white clothes and clean smells while everything was going crazy. The doctors tried hard, but they couldn't get me stable. Once more, my heart gave out, and I fell into silence. I left my physical body again and was floating above the surgery table. The scene below was strange. It was a group of medical workers working together, their hands shaking a little as they did their jobs. Through the sterile hum, bits of their talk could be heard. This child's brain has been severely damaged. His quality of life will be greatly diminished even if he lives. Their words cut deep into me, making me feel both shocked and sad. I wanted to speak out against it and let them know I heard them, but I couldn't. I watched the doctors make cuts while being surrounded by cold, clinical instruments and the steady beeping of machines. Their movements were exact, but heavy with the seriousness of the situation. In the middle of all this chaos, an interesting energy started to build up around me. An angel walked into the room. It didn't have wings, but its eyes were filled with deep peace. The angel reached out and lightly touched my face. It was a soothing touch that put my soul in a deep state of peace. The pure, glowing energy that this angel gave off was like a breath of fresh air in a world that was upside down. I had no idea who he was or why he was here, but I felt like his job was to help and comfort me. Just being around him made me feel deeply at peace. When I asked about my dad, the angel was quiet for a moment, as if he was thinking about how important what he was saying was. When he finally spoke, it was calm and clear. "Your father is well." The promise made my heart feel better. Then the words that hurt my heart came. "He is gone to heaven." I felt like a cold wave hit me when I heard the news. "Do you mean that my dad has died?" I spoke slowly. "Why did he leave us? Why did he leave my mom and me?" "Your father's mission on earth is complete," the angel said with a softer look. "He has to go to the other world." It was hard to believe what was said. I felt like my dad had left us, which was a very different idea from how I felt about being abandoned. The angel could tell I was upset and comforted me by saying, "Your father has not left you. He will never leave you." I felt like I was dying. The angel heard my pleas and took me to see my dad. The angel gave me a soft, shaky head and told me it wasn't my time to go to heaven. I still had important things to do here on earth. He did tell me, though, that I would see my dad again someday. As I tried to deal with this truth, I felt both anger and sadness. I begged him again, and this time my voice was shaking with hope. The angel finally gave in after some thought. He agreed to help me, even though it would be hard. In the big picture of my trip, he told me that this visit would only last a short time. With an accepting nod, I got ready for this one-of-a-kind trip. The angel took my hand, and we began to rise together. We flew through airy white clouds, and as we got closer to the garden below, I couldn't believe my eyes. The garden was full of colorful plants and trees, and there was a clear stream running through the middle of it. It was a place of peaceful beauty, an island of peace. We went deeper into the yard after the angel until a house appeared in front of us. It looked exactly like my house. It was light blue and had a tall oak tree standing guard at the front door. There was lush green grass all around it. The door was open, making it a friendly welcome. When I walked in, I saw a room that looked a lot like my own. It had pale yellow walls, brown furniture, and a guitar on the wall. I saw a family picture I knew, a quick shot of my parents and me. It felt like I had come back to a familiar and loved place when I walked into that room. I heard something outside the room that caught my attention. It was my dad's voice. When I walked outside, I saw him. He was a lot younger, and a soft smile lit up his face. There was a mix of happiness and sadness in my heart. As I got closer, he hugged me from the heart and held me close. As I put my head on his shoulder, tears came out easily. "May I take you home?" I asked in between crying. "Come with me, you and Mom." My dad smiled and said in a soft voice, "Son, my time here is up. I'll always be here for you and your mom." As he wiped away my tears, his words were full of kindness. "You need to keep living your life. Take care of your mom. Do not be sad. I will always be there for you and keep you safe. One day, you and your mother will join me here," he said as a promise. "This is also going to be your home, and we'll always be together." In a calm voice, my dad led me through the house, and then asked, "Son, would you like to meet your grandfather?" I had never met my grandfather because he died before I was born. The only things I knew about him were from my dad. My dad told me a lot of stories about this daring man whose life sounded like a great adventure. "Where do we need to go to meet him?" I asked, feeling both excited and interested. He answered, "We're going to a special place." His eyes sparkled with a knowing smile. We got to a peaceful, beautiful garden with bright flowers and lots of green grass. As we climbed the steps to a quiet part of the yard, my dad's hand stayed steady in mine. There, among the beautiful flowers, was my grandfather. A big smile lit up his face as he held a travel picture in his hands. As I got closer, my grandfather looked at me with eyes that were warm and familiar. He began, "Son," his voice full of love. "I've been watching you grow up. I know you're a brave kid. It looks like you want to be an adventurer like I do," he said. With a proud stance, my grandfather opened up an old map and carefully traced the lines on it. He pointed to different marks and said, "These are the places I've explored. I've been around a lot, through thick forests and across wild rivers." He added with sparkles in his eyes, "Son, you can also reach your goals if you have enough courage." The stories he told made me want to go on even more adventures. We talked for what seemed like hours. My dad finally put a soft hand on my shoulder to let me know it was time for us to leave. It became clear that we were going to be saying goodbye soon. Grandpa stood up, walked slowly toward us, and took my hand in his. "Son, don't be afraid of what you don't know. Be brave and follow your dreams," he said in a low voice. Then, with one last smile that made her feel better, he turned and walked deeper into the garden, becoming one with the shadows of the thick trees. It was time to say goodbye to my dad. While I hugged him tightly, tears were running down my face. My dad stroked my back to make me feel better, and his voice was calm and full of love. "Be strong, son. You're still needed by your mom. I have faith in you as a kid, a partner, and a future dad." I told him I would do everything I could to take care of my mom. My father waved goodbye with one last loving smile. I was in a coma for a week when I got back to the hospital. My mother never left my side. She always watched over me. The doctor told her the surgery went well, but it would take some time to heal. During the next 3 days, I stayed in the hospital, where my mother was always there to care for me. When I woke up, she was always there to comfort and support me. While I was getting better, my mother wouldn't say anything about my dad's death, but I could tell she was very sad. There were times when I caught a peek of her quietly crying in a corner of the room. I went on and on about my amazing experience with her. I told her about how an angel had taken me to heaven, where I met my father and saw a yard that looked just like our house. My mother had a hard time understanding what I was going through. She thought the things I was saying were just dreams. Even though her doubt hurt a little, I was sure of what I had seen. I told my story again, going into more depth about how I had seen my grandfather in heaven. He was wearing all white, and his hair and beard were as white as snow. One thing that stood out was that he was missing his left thumb, which he said was because of an injury he got while rock climbing. My mother looked very upset when she heard this news. She was shocked that I could correctly describe how my grandfather looked and the injury he had sustained, since he had died a long time before I was born. My story made a clear, unmistakable link to my grandfather's past that she couldn't easily ignore. I told her that my dad was doing well in the next life. We should remember our loss, but we should also try to live our lives to the fullest. His words were a gentle reminder that my dad would always be waiting for us in heaven, and that his presence would always be there to comfort us. My mother hugged me very tightly because what I said moved her. After a few days, I was sent home from the hospital. The doctors were wrong when they said I would turn into a veggie. Instead, my health and power slowly came back. I came to believe that my recovery was a great gift from my father and grandpa, who were watching over me from above.